And so as a product leader, you have to learn to build things differently. Hiring ahead of where you need to be in a stage of growth is really critical for leaders. Product ops is really unsung hero for a lot of product teams. The quality of the data that you put in is going to affect the quality of the output you get from the AI. Companies that take a step back and really re-architect their company to leverage AI.
Welcome to Discover Dialogues podcast, powered by Tech Dogs. The world of business and technology is evolving at breakneck speed. AI breakthroughs, digital transformation, and game-changing innovations are reshaping industries every day. On this show, we dive into the trends, ideas, and strategies driving the future. We're sitting down with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors to bring you fresh insights, bold perspectives, and real conversations that matter. So plug in, tune in, and let's discover what's next.
Today on Discover Dialogues, we're joined by Andy Boyd, Chief Product Officer at Appfire. With a career spanning from pioneering AI initiatives at IBM to leading product innovation at Appfire, Andy brings a wealth of experience in driving growth and fostering innovation. His insights into product strategy and leadership are sure to provide valuable perspectives for our listeners. Let's dive in. Welcome to Tech Dogs Discover Dialogues podcast, Andy. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And Andy, before we deep dive into your product strategy and AI transformation, I want to take a step back into your journey because it's a fascinating one, right? And you've moved across roles that shaped some of the most important innovations in tech, right? So, you were right there when IBM Watson was becoming a household name. And at a time when AI was still emerging from academic labs into real world products. And that kind of early exposure must have shaped how you think about product and innovation at scale. So, Andy, my first question to you would be, how did your experiences at IBM, particularly with Watson and AI initiatives, shape your approach to product leadership at Appfire?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm very fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had. I felt like when I took the role with IBM, I felt like I won the lottery. I felt like it was the same when I joined Appfire, so I'm very fortunate. But to answer the question, how my career has shaped my experiences and led me to Appfire. Well, early in my career, I was very entrepreneurial, worked in startup companies. Then, as you mentioned, I was fortunate enough to work at IBM within Watson and help bring Watson to market. And I think the combination of those experiences really helped shape my role and my leadership here at Appfire in a couple ways. So first, with Watson, obviously it's the AI experience, which is very important today. If you're working in tech, you have to be focused in some ways in both the way that you work and also in your product on AI. So I learned a lot in the very early days of AI, critically important. But I think the second part that's really important in my role here at Appfire is working with a small company, a startup, and then going on to work with IBM. I got to experience what it means to be very entrepreneurial, which product leaders have to learn how to bring new products to market. But then the second part, when I worked at IBM, I learned what a big scaled organization looks like and what it looks like in a good way. I mean, there's few companies in the world the size of IBM. Not to say they do everything perfect, but they do a lot of things right. And I saw a lot of great examples of what it means to operate at scale. And so with Appfire, it was really connecting the two. It was a period of hyper growth. So being entrepreneurial, but then also knowing what good looks like as you scale and building to that scale, the kind of from to, that was also critically important. Lessons that I've learned and applied here at Appfire. But I think the third thing that I learned, which is also very important in building great products, is what really good design and customer research and even data looks like. I was very fortunate during my time at IBM to have worked with a great design organization. At the time that I worked there, we were doing a transformation around design-centric, building products through design-centric strategies and tactics. So we had great customer research. We had great tools that we were able to use to understand how customers were using our products. And so I got to learn, particularly around the data stack. I learned what a world-class data stack looks like. And here at Appfire, I've been fortunate enough that there was a friend that I work with at IBM. He joined us, and he and his team have built, I would say, an even better stack that we can use to really understand our customers and build great products.
Definitely. And, I do agree with you, on terms of, how, working with startups, and, you require an entrepreneurial mind to work with startups. And when you work with big organizations, that actually helps you to, understand how processes are set and all of that. And other than that, the other point which you said about, the whole design centric thinking for products, that is, I feel, design needs to be like right from development stage. You need to be customer centric to ensure that your products, reach and add value to your customers, and that's where I believe, and I agree with you on that point, right? And that brings me down to the next question, and looking at your trajectory, right, from Watson to cloud, from IBM to scaling a SaaS portfolio at Appfire, it feels like there must have been a pivotal moment or decision that really changed your perspective on how product should be built, right? So, what's one pivotal moment, Andy, or a turning point in your career that changed the way you think about building products today?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly it was parts of what I've already referenced. I've always been very customer centric. And so seeing really great examples of understanding the customer in the qualitative ways, but also the quantitative is obviously very important. But as I think about a pivotal moment that really shaped my leadership style here at Appfire, I think of two things really. The first was being part of an organization that was bringing leading edge technology to market. I saw the chasm model in real life, live and in person. So the chasm model is a book written by Jeffrey Moore, and it talks about how people adopt new technologies. If you've read the book, it basically talks about in the early stage of technology adoption, you're selling to visionaries who see the potential of the technology and they're adopting and investing to get competitive advantage. And then as the technology continues to grow, it moves into more pragmatic scale where people are looking to adopt the technology, but they want to see real examples of how it's benefiting others. And so that's the chasm model in a super concise nutshell. Obviously, there's more to it. But I saw that in real life. And it wasn't just something that sounded good in a book. We actually saw customers behaving in those ways. We would get on phone calls with people that were those true early adopters. They saw the vision. They didn't quite know yet what we could do with the technology, but they were investing. And so as a product leader, you have to learn to build things differently. And more importantly, you have to learn how to communicate and kind of sell. I mean, I wasn't in a sales role, but in product, you're always selling the value of your technology. So you had to learn how to sell different. But then as people started to adopt it, you have to start to adapt what you build and how you communicate. What are those referenceable use cases? What are the real examples and the real use cases? So I saw that in real life. So it's changed the way that I think about where a technology is in its life cycle and how you, what strategies you deploy and how you do your job. But the second thing that really illustrated to me more practically was how do you map the personality in your team to the job or to where the product is in its life cycle. So if you're managing, most of us in product leadership roles are managing a portfolio of products. It's pretty unlikely that you're managing just one product in a leadership role. So you tend to lead a portfolio, a small portfolio, a large one like we have at Appfire, but you're leading a portfolio. And inevitably in the portfolio, you're going to have some of your products that really need to be the tip of the spear. These are the products that you're investing in, that are moving forward, that are really the future of the portfolio or future growth vectors. And you need to map the personality type of the person that's leading that in the product team to where that is. Then other parts of the portfolio you need them to continue to do what they're doing, continue to optimize and grow, but they're not maybe the tip of the spear entrepreneurial. So I think inevitably when you're building your product team and you're thinking about the parts of the product that really need to be aggressively advancing, you need that personality type that's not be willing to just do things as they've been done. You need the personality type that sees the mission, understands what it's going to take, and is going to go accomplish it, even if it requires doing things in a somewhat unconventional way.
And it does a very valuable insights that you given in this response itself, right? Like right from the book that you suggested, I'm going to put it on my next book that I read. The second thing which you also touched based on pragmatic adoption of technology, because I believe a lot of technology that has been adopted, enterprises might get hooked into the hype, and then that's where the whole ball game starts to fall apart, because they fell into the hype of the technology, and they do not focus on the pragmatic adoption of that technology itself. And the third thing which you touched based on was the people who challenge the status quo, right? The go-getters. And I believe these are the people that bring the changes what they were there. And I definitely that's the kind of personality that you're looking out for when you're trying to build a product. And you also touched based on how product led strategy, for example, right, a chief product officer probably is right involved from the development R&D of the product till what challenges are the customers facing, how can I improve my product to ensure that my product is adding value to their processes. So it's always inspiring to see how leaders evolve, and not in just terms of roles, but in how they think, right? And you just explained, give us an overview of how product leaders need to think, not just in terms of roles as well. But and we are at a point where the pace of technology, especially when we speak about AI, right? It isn't rapid at the moment. It's almost outpacing traditional business decision cycles, right? So how do you see the role of product and business leaders evolving in a world of AI, and can it outpace traditional decision cycles?
Definitely, AI is changing the world, both in the products that we're going to build and use, but also in the way that we do our job. Um, so I think that fundamentally, as product leaders, we do have to think different. We do have to think about the products we're building, and if we could reimagine how we build in an AI first world, it will change what we build. But I also think in the way that we do our jobs,
Uh-huh.
AI doesn't necessarily change the fundamentals. At the end of the day, people don't wake up and say, I want to buy software. They wake up and they say, I've got a problem I'm trying to solve, or a job I'm trying to do, and I need something to help me accomplish that. And they look to software to be able to solve that. And so I think as product leaders, fundamentally, it still always goes back to we have to deeply understand the markets we're serving, the types of customers we want to serve. More importantly, the job that the customer is trying to accomplish, or the problem that they're trying to solve. And we need to build products, whether it's ideally it's AI first in the modern era, but if it's not, we need to build products that help them accomplish those jobs and also help them solve those problems they're trying to solve. And so the way that we have thought about, the way that I've thought about it, is the first thing we have to, as knowledge workers, product leader, engineer, designer, marketer, finance, accounting, legal, whatever your role is, the first thing is in the knowledge work economy, we have to be using AI. AI is going to help complement our skills. It's going to help us do our jobs faster, more effectively. In some cases, better with more precision because we have better access to data, and that AI can help us do our job. So we have to be using AI. If you're a knowledge worker and you're not using AI to help you do your job and figure out how to use the technology to better do your own job, you're behind. So I think that's the first thing.
Definitely. And as we were speaking about, AI first adoption and things like that, in previous interactions of Discover Dialogues, right? A lot of CXOs have come and said, like we will not be able to we will not live in a world without AI again, and that hit me really hard, in terms of AI is going to be a very important factor of our life. It's weaved into the fabrics of society at such a deeper level now that there's not going to be a take back on, the step is not going to be reverted. And then also you touch based on during this response of how product teams need to focus on what are the challenges customers facing, and need to then develop products that solve their problems. And whether it be by integrating AI, if it's helping the customers to solve the problem, then why not use the technology for the betterment of the processes, company, and the overall organizational growth. Is that what I feel? And and what I really feel striking is how organizations still look at AI, cloud, or automation as a series of tools to be checked off from the roadmap. And we were discussing about pragmatic approaches to technology adoption, not just get caught into the hype, right? So how can decision makers how can they avoid treating technology adoption like a checklist and instead turn it into a long-term transformation?
This is a great question, and one that I've thought quite a bit about. I think we're all in technology thinking about this. I think that as people look, we're still in the early days of AI. We're still really learning about the true capability, and the technology is advancing at speeds that we haven't really seen yet. And so, what it does today is dramatically different than what it's going to do a year from now and 2 years from now.
Exactly.
So, I think we're really still just learning. But what I've seen is really two types of scenarios. As people start to embrace AI and they're starting to learn, the first scenario is there are teams that would kind of just bolt on AI. So they continue to do the things that they're doing and they just slap on AI at the edges, not very coordinated.
Mm-hmm.
The other type that I see, which I think is the right one, is companies that take a step back and really re-architect their company to leverage AI. And so if you think about the value of AI, it really is a flywheel. So as you bring the data together, you infuse it with AI and you start to use it. As you then use it, you improve it because you create data exhaust and you can tune and train the models. And then as you do that, the models get better, which creates more use, which creates more value. So it really does become this flywheel. I know that that's been a somewhat abused term, but that's really the way that the technology works. And so then if we go back to these two different companies, inevitably the companies that just sort of bolt on AI, they attach it at the edges of the jobs that they're doing. They kind of attach it at the edges of the way that they do their company. Inevitably what will happen is they will start to get value from AI,
Mm-hmm.
but because it's not, the data isn't really integrated, the teams aren't really connected, the usage isn't making it better for everyone in the organization. Inevitably, what happens is those companies will see some benefits in the near term.
Mm-hmm.
They will hit a ceiling just because as more people use it, they're not getting more value, and the incremental value, the incremental benefit just stops. However, the companies that really re-architect and they bring their data together and they make sure that as teams are working collaboratively, collectively, the the company overall benefits from all that use. Then as more people use it, as the data gets better, as the AI gets better, the models get better, they will ultimately start to see some exponential scale. And so I think that it's easy to do the checklist and say we are
Mm-hmm.
experimenting with AI, but the companies that will really win in the next few years are the ones that really take a step back, re-architect so that they're well positioned to leverage all the value of AI. And as more people use it, they get better and better. I think that's what we really need to drive. It's not easy. There's probably not many companies that do that, but that's what I think we really have to do if we want to win in the age of AI.
Exactly. I really like how you touch based on the point of like how things might be different from now, right? Because AI has literally outpaced the speed, how it's transforming, and I guess this is the second generation of AI that has been implemented right now. So I'm just excited to see what the third generation of AI would do, and what changes would it bring in the processes across industries. And the second point which you stated, right, like in terms of data, and I believe data is the core. If you want to do purpose driven AI implementation, I feel the data that is fed into the system needs to be qualitative, weighted, and so that it helps businesses to grow and have a purpose driven AI adoption, rather than just, if the data is scattered or not right data is fed, there are higher chances of AI and the entire organization, the processes to just scatter off, and it becoming a disaster. So your insights over here, how businesses should proceed with, instead of considering an adoption of a new technology as a checklist, they need to consider it as a long term project, and what changes would it give into my processes, right? And when you start thinking long term, and that's when I believe the changes can be slow, the results can be slow, but when you think long term, I believe that organizations will be succeeding in adoption in any technology, let that be cloud, automation, or AI for that matter of fact.
The
Mm-hmm.
data is the quality of the data that you put in is going to affect the quality of the output you get from the AI.
The discussion that we're having today, and we've been discussing about how the product leaders are been evolving, and for me it feels like today's product and business leaders are not just operators anymore, they are the real architects of change, right? And that comes down with a new kind of responsibility to ask not just what we build, but we are building in the right place. So one of the biggest challenges in scaling a product organization is the constant tension between shipping new things and defining that already exist, right? So as a chief product officer, uh, Andy, how do you balance innovation versus optimization, and especially when supporting thousands of customers across diverse software ecosystems? And I believe that Appfire has almost more than 20,000 plus customers, and approximately more than 55% of them are from Fortune 500 companies. And I feel that's a really great achievement for you guys. So how do you support how do you balance innovation versus optimization?
This is a question that I hear often from some of the product leaders on my own team and really across my career. I think a lot of times when product managers, product leaders think about innovation, they always think about building new products. And certainly building and launching new products is a lot of fun. I think great product people always love to do that. Very exciting. So I don't blame them. But I think that innovation really happens across a spectrum. And the way that I've always thought about it is, and the way I think about it in our current role, is we have, as you mentioned, 20,000 plus customers using our products. Um, we have a very big install base across our portfolio that we can innovate all day, every day. And even
Mm-hmm.
better, because we have that install base, they're going to benefit almost immediately from the innovations that we're bringing. I think sometimes we don't think about that, but as product leaders, if you really want to drive innovation, the best opportunity is to do it is within your existing products because you've got that built-in customer base. Whereas building and launching new products, that's hard. It takes time, and you're going to start with a very small customer base.
Exactly.
So I think we think about innovation really across the spectrum. And the two ways that really help us drive innovation is the first, having a great portfolio framework. So as product leaders, this is pretty typical, but the way that you can think about innovating within your portfolio is you can innovate in two directions. You can work on existing products or new products across one dimension. Across the other dimension, you can
Mm-hmm.
innovate for existing customers or reach new customers. And so what we do as we're building our product plans for the year or multi-years is we're thinking about how are we placing bets and allocating investment across those dimensions. And there is a golden ratio. The golden ratio is generally about 70% of your investment should be existing products, existing customers, and then about 30% should be spread across those adjacencies. Now, that doesn't always work out perfectly, but that's the thing that you should sort of strive for.
Mm-hmm.
And what you will see is the existing products, existing customers, those should be more consistent, smaller returns, but they're consistent. As you spread across the adjacencies, you're probably going to see two things. First is you will see some failures. That's inevitable. But the second thing that you should see is some of the successes should have bigger returns just
Mm-hmm.
because by definition, they're more risk. And so I think having that portfolio framework is really important. But the second thing that I think is really critical is it's not just having the framework and placing those bets. The second thing is having a great product system. And so this is for us where I think product ops is really unsung hero for a lot of product teams. We have a great ops team and we have a great system that we've developed. We're always making it better, just like any product organization. But we've really spent a couple of years in improving how we set goals, how we track, and how we report. And then equally importantly, how we adjust over time as things change. And this isn't just building a system, the artifacts that we use, the way that we track and report, the meetings that we run, but it's also behavioral. And that's really the hard part. I think the ideal scenario when it's working well is we have some of these top level goals, like the bets that we're placing against that framework that we can set at a strategic level, but then there's enough space where from the bottom up, the teams that are closest to the products, closest to the customers, they can really adapt and adjust and push up so that you're bringing the top level strategic perspective, you're bringing the bottoms up where the rubber meets the road perspective. And when they meet in the middle, that's really nirvana. And so I think in order to do that, you need that great strategic framework that points us in the right long-term direction. But then we also need a great system so that we can set the goals, drive the performance, and equally important, adapt as we go along and as we learn more.
Definitely, and I do agree with you on that point. How customer feedbacks plays an important role in optimizing your product, because at the end, your product is supposed to solve their problems, and the more feedbacks you get, and understanding, what your customers actually need in the product, what problems are they helping, like what problems are they looking to solve, and these feedbacks you start integrating into your product strategies. I believe that it's gonna be a real nice value add towards your product. So optimization is always better than innovation, because innovation need not be always doing the same thing. You can definitely do something in the existing development space, or your tools basically, and that can be innovation too, because you're innovating your products and helping your customers solve the problems they have on a day-to-day basis. And what I feel is, in today's distributed work environment, maintaining a cohesive company culture presents unique challenges, right? So culture is often called the invisible operating system of a company. So my question to you, as you're in the leadership role, so how do you intentionally shape culture while scaling or integrating new technologies?
Yeah, I love what you said. Culture is absolutely the operating system of most companies. It's a phrase I've used myself personally, so I love the analogy. I think what I've seen is, well, Appfire is the most culture value focused organization I've had the opportunity to work with. And I love the way that we treat our values and our cultures. It's really an awesome experience and very unique. And I think for me, the two things that I've felt about how we continue to enforce the culture
Mm-hmm.
is the first, like it's the no-brainer. We absolutely, when we're hiring people, assess culture fit. We also do this as part of our acquisition process, where we're evaluating culture fit of the acquisitions we're evaluating. But certainly the things that we probably have the most control over is who we hire, and making sure that you're hiring people that fit with cultures critical. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But the really interesting that I've seen in a very strong culture-centric organization is when we don't get it right, you can almost start to see the culture kick in and start to the person that maybe isn't a fit. You can see the culture kick in and start to adapt. Sometimes those people adapt, sometimes they don't. But the culture starts to reinforce itself, which is really awesome. I think the second thing that's really unique and that we do here and I do is we use our values as tools. So there's not a week that goes by where I don't hear somebody talking about one of our values in the context of situation or decision. And so I think for me, um, keeping those values at the forefront and talking about them as a tool, it keeps them top of mind, front and center, and people are always referencing back to them. So I think that's been very, really valuable. You also touched on how do we think about when integrating new technology? I mean, at the base level, as you bring people in and you put them on new technologies, you got to hire the right people, you got to have the right culture, right tools to continue to reinforce the culture of the company. But I think the other one thing that's important about integrating new technologies goes back to the example we shared earlier is you got to make sure you find that right person, the person who's entrepreneurial, curious. They got to maintain the right culture and values of the company, but they probably are going to lean more towards intellectual curiosity, entrepreneurial. And those are the people that you also want to bring in when you're bringing in a new technology like AI.
Definitely, and I do agree with you, intellectual curiosity is something that every resource needs to have to ensure, they achieve their goals. And, and then we discussed about integrating new technologies, and that usually comes with change, right? And leading through change often uncovers resistance and unforeseen challenges, right? So, is there any one of the most difficult organizational changes that you have led? And did you face any resistance? And if yes, what did you learn from the resistance? If you could let our audience know.
Yeah, the most recent organizational change I've had the opportunity to lead has really been my experience here thus far at Appfire, and it continues. Appfire has been a rapidly growing company. There was a time a few years ago when my team went from 3 to 30, and it continued to grow beyond that as well. And in that time of rapid growth, I used to say that I felt like I got a new job every quarter. So this was a lot, that hyper growth period for people that have been in it. It's a lot of fun, but it's hard, and we continue to grow quickly. But that hyper growth is very unique, and I think that it was a lot of fun. But probably the biggest lesson I learned in that time is, well, it's this: it's hiring leadership ahead of where you need to be. So early days when I first joined, we had about 2 or 3 people in product. Then there was a period where it scaled up very quickly to 30, and it continued to grow from there. But in those earlier days, I always felt like I was a half step behind. We were hiring the roles for what we needed at the moment, but
Uh-huh.
then the next quarter would come and we would continue to grow, or we'd take on new initiatives, whatever. And so we're always, at that time, it felt like I was always just a little bit behind because we were hiring for the needs we had today, but we were growing at such a rapid pace that the needs were evolving quickly. And so by the time we hired, we had another
Mm-hmm.
set of needs that we hadn't considered. And so after experiencing this, I personally started to hire more ahead of where we were going. So thinking and extrapolating into the future where we were going to be, and then hiring for that role. And the there was 2 places where I really felt the benefit of that. There was one situation where we hired a leader to take on a really important initiative. And technically, we probably didn't need to hire that role in that moment. But this was a really skilled person. The initiative was really important. We were at the time and continue to grow very quickly. And so we just knew that this role would get bigger. And so we hired ahead of where we needed to be. About a quarter or two later, a big change came that we had to take on. And it was awesome. Like, this person took that initiative on, and we never even skipped a beat. And it was
Mm-hmm.
probably the first time, at least for myself personally, that I really felt the benefit of hiring ahead. I then saw another example very similar with one of the leaders on my team. This leader on my team did the same thing, had a role, hired a person who was a little ahead of probably what we
Mm-hmm.
needed at the moment. Same exact thing happened. About a quarter or two later, some big initiatives came through that we weren't necessarily planning because we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
them at the time that we created the role. And when these initiatives came down the pipe, this person was easily able to take that on, and it didn't affect the leader that reported to me, and we were able to continue to deliver, and um, we were able to continue to deliver on those initiatives. And I think that hiring ahead of where you need to be in a stage of growth is really critical for leaders, because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, what inevitably happens is you as the leader just get pulled down into that hole that's created. And so that just means you're probably not doing your job as effectively as you need to be. And the person beneath you is not doing their job either. You're trying to do that. So you're trying to do 2 jobs at once. You're just not going to be effective. So for anybody that's going through a rapid period of growth, I think that's the number one lesson is extrapolate out where you think you're going to be in a year or whatever, and just hire at the leadership level ahead of where you need to be, and you will not regret that decision.
Definitely, I do agree with you on the point, you need to hire leaders thinking ahead of time. And when you do that, you have right people at the right place to streamline your processes and ensure that, your goals are being achieved without being boggled down with the bottlenecks of their processes and somebody else's work. So hiring ahead of time will definitely help. And, an organization that's at a high growth space will help them to grow. So Andy, this brings us to the last section, and this segment is a rapid fire segment, right? So this round offers a sneak peek into who Andy is beyond the boardroom, yeah. And think of it as a breather after the deep dives, high energy, and but still insightful interaction that we had right now. So, are you ready for the rapid fire section, Andy?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Perfect. So, a food or drink you must have to survive after a product launch week.
Easy. Coffee. I love coffee.
Coffee. If you could
Right.
master one non-work related skill instantly, what it would be?
Oh, man. Speaking another language here in the US, on average, we're not as good at learning other languages, but as you travel around the world, many other countries are much better at speaking other languages. And so personally, I'm working on this now, but I would love to be able to speak another language other than coding. I guess I can write code that's technically another language, but that's not really what I mean. I want to be able to speak other languages around the world.
So, one city that gives you a creative energy every time you visit.
I'll give you a country. It's probably I've been fortunate to travel to different places in the world.
Uh-huh.
So far, my favorite country has been Spain. There's just something about the culture. It's a very warm culture, very energetic. Depending on where you go, the culture around food just it feels every time that I'm there. Just the vibe that you get. It's very warm and welcoming, and always feels very festive and celebratory because of that culture. And then the
Mm-hmm.
again, depending on the city, the culture around food and kind of entertainment and dining experiences.
What's the first app do you open in the open every morning?
Well, funny enough, it is a Spanish app because I have been low key working on learning Spanish, but I'm not very good. So don't ask me anything in Spanish. But I've been in a regular habit of doing that in the morning as I'm drinking my coffee.
So, one destination that's still on your bucket list.
Well, I would say, okay, I'm going to give you two. I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. I'm going to give you two. Um, First one is I'd love to go to Italy. So as I've shared with other people who travel around the world, I said, hey, Spain has been probably my favorite place to visit so far. They're like, oh, you got to go to Italy because Italy is very similar. So probably somewhere in Italy would also be really exciting to visit. I think the other place is there are some. I one of my hobbies outside of work is the ocean and diving. And so for me personally, my family may not be into it as much as myself, but I would love to visit some of these really unique dive destinations.
Tech gadget that you own but you've never actually used.
Well, I would say one that I bought that I stopped using, but I started using more recently is my Kindle. I like to read a lot, and so I would read on the iPad, but I found that what inevitably happens is because there's so many other apps, it's too easy to get distracted and start going to other apps. And so I really now I've gotten into the habit of using the Kindle because it's very focused and you're not easily distracted and you can really enjoy whatever it is that you're reading. So Kindle, outside of like work related things, Kindle is probably my current favorite tech gadget.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your responses, Andy. It has been a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much for joining us on Discover Dialogues. Your insights into product leadership, AI integration, and cultivating company culture has truly enlightening. We appreciate your sharing your experience and wisdom with our audience. It's a pleasure to having you on the show.
Likewise, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Definitely. Any parting words that you would like, to leave for our audience to take away from this conversation?
Great question. I would say any product leaders, aspiring product leaders, I'd go back to one of the questions you asked is how does how does AI affect our current job? And I think the thing that I would leave you with is what we discussed. It's um, at the end of the day, great product teams build products that help customers solve important missions or solve important problems. And so I think that never changes. It never changes. So I think as you want to continue to grow your career, just really getting good at understanding the customer, solving their needs, that's job number one. But I think the other thing that I would leave you with is as you're starting to embrace and adopt AI, start looking for creative ways to understand, to leverage AI to help understand both your customer and also better solve the problems.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time, Andy.
Likewise, we'll see you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.